to have you all here with me this evening, and thank you for offering up your private personal time to attend the session. The reason the session is today and at this time is because the analysis I did from the survey I sent out showed that the majority of the students for this module will be available at this time on this day. So that's the reason I scheduled the session for tonight at this time. I'm recording the session so that those students who are unable to attend can look at the recording afterwards and also have the benefit, although they won't have the benefit of our wonderful company. So without further ado, let us proceed with our session tonight. So good evening, everybody. This is our first class for the module FOR2608, in which we are going to start covering the study material, and we are looking at investigative interviewing tonight. So for those of you who may not know me and may be unfamiliar with my face, there I am on the left. I'm Professor Benson. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Police Practice. On the right is an image of my family as well. I'm showing you these pictures so that, number one, you can see that I'm human. I actually exist. I'm a female, so please don't send me emails, dear sir, thank you, sir, because ladies can also be professors. And also to show you that I have a family. I have a husband. I've been married to him for 23 wonderful years. We're both ex-police officials. I have a son. He's the one just in front of me, and I have a daughter. She is on the far right. So Bradley is now 21 and Michaela is 18. So after hours, after 4 in the afternoon, my time is theirs, and on weekends, my time is theirs. So please do respect my personal space. As you can see from my resume, I was a police official from 1988 to 2007. This means that I was a cop for almost 20 years, forgive my maths is failing me now, and I joined directly out of high school. And in 2007, I accepted a position at the University of South Africa as a lecturer because training has always been my passion. I attained a BTech policing and MTech policing degrees, both cum laude, and I hold a DLitt et Fil in police science, which is a PhD, and my area of speciality is art crime. I am responsible for 4 modules, FR1502, 2607, 2608, and 5907. So if you write me an email, please make sure you tell me which module you are inquiring about. Otherwise, it's going to be a to and fro for me to find out which module you are inquiring about. I'm also a postgrad supervisor for 13 masters and 4 PhD students. So that is in a bit of a nutshell what my academic responsibilities entail. So your module consists of 5 units. Each study unit addresses a different aspect of information gathering. I'm sorry, somebody's mic is on. Guys, can you just check that your mics are switched off, please? Be mindful that if you're a police officials are appointed under legislation. So they come with a legislated authority. And when they have to question somebody or interview somebody, that person is obliged by law to speak to them. However, if you're in the corporate space, you're like a forensic investigator, corporate investigator, or even a private investigator hired to do an investigation, people don't have to talk to you. You have no legislated authority. So you will have to find other ways to encourage people to talk to you and to obtain communication. Sorry, I just want to see whose mic is on. Somebody's mic is on. Okay, let me just mute that. Okay. So what resources have you been given for FR2608? There is no prescribed book, so don't stress about that. There is only a study guide. There are 2 tutorial letters. The first one is already on the module site. It gives you the background information of the administration and financial stuff that you need to ask. It gives you information about the first year experience, about the Telegram group. It gives you the basics of the assessments that you are going to get, but it gives you nothing of the questions and anything else related to that. For that, you must go to the module site. We have one module site. It's a stunning module site. I love the Moodle platform. Sometimes it's like an old cranky lady and she doesn't want to work, but most of the time she works well, and our engagement on the new module site is fabulous. There is one Telegram group. If you have not joined that group, please do so. The interaction there is amazing, especially when we get close to exams. Yeah, then we post MCQ questions and quizzes, and we quiz each other and we discuss questions, and in so doing we can create a community of practice. When I say we, I am active there, not so that I can spy on you, but so that I can monitor conversations and pick up when students are going off course with discussions or misinterpreting things, and thereby I steer you back onto the right path. So you have one lecturer. You are stuck with me for this semester. If I go away, I take a few days off, Mrs. Van Niekerk will stand in for me, but I will alert you before the time via email and notifications on the module site. And at this stage, we are no longer 600 plus fellow students, we are 700 plus fellow students. So this is what your new module site looks like. For those of you who have not yet seen this, please make the effort and go and look at this site. I want to show you something here. Can you see here on the left-hand side? It says participants. So I can go here and I can check up on people who have never been to the site, because sometimes those are the emails I get that complain bitterly about the lack of support and the lack of communication. But if I go and look here, then the person hasn't been on the site for eons. So that's what the module site looks like. Now, if you scroll down the left side, you will find your assessments. You will also find your study guide and your tutorial letters, everything there for you to use. Now, sometimes a toka loss gets into the system, and these things disappear. The study guide disappears. The tutorial letter disappears. Then you scroll down this section here, and I've put in additional resources. I've uploaded the tutorial letters and the study guide. So even if the toka loss comes and he steals it, yeah, it's still embedded here. He can't get into this space. Okay, so what else is new on the module site? Well, there are lessons that you can do, activities that you can take part in. These will help you to better understand the module content and the lesson content. So presently, the lessons for units 1, 2, and 3 are open. Now, they're not compulsory. They don't count marks, no? But if you don't do them, how are you going to know that your understanding of the study material is accurate? How are you going to learn? How are you going to enhance your knowledge if you're only listening to one voice and that's your own voice? That's not going to happen. So I really want to encourage you, visit the module site and take part in the activities there. Let's first take a look at our learning objectives. What do I want to teach you in study unit 1? So in study unit 1, I want you to be able to understand the concepts interviewing and interrogation. Because in information gathering as an activity, you are going to talk to people, you are going to interview them, and you may even end up interrogating. I hope in the private space or corporate space, you never go over to the level of interrogation unless you have been specifically trained to do it. This module does not train you to do interrogation. It explains to you the basics of interrogation. You will have to explain the differences between these two concepts. You should be able to apply interviewing and interrogation techniques in a basic investigation. I'm going to ask that you don't try the interrogation techniques in a basic investigation unless you have been mentored by an experienced investigator and you have been given an opportunity to enhance your skills. You should be able to spot deception in a witness or a suspect. Look at the word deception. Deception doesn't mean the person is lying. The deception means the person may not be telling the whole truth. Not telling the whole truth is not equal to lying. It means they're hiding something or omitting something, leaving something out. And then you should be able to apply basic statement analysis. Shepard, I see you waving your hand. Is there a problem?
Yes, Prof. We can't see the presentation and we're trying to type and tell you that.
Oh, I am so sorry.
I had to do this to disturb you. Sorry.
Better.
All right. There we go.
Okay. Maswi, you are a lifesaver. I'm going to go back to slide 1. Okay. Folks, I'm very sorry. I am so sorry. I forgot to press the share button. Okay. So there's me and my family, and there are my modules. I'm going to skip over this quickly. There are the units that we're going to be dealing with in information gathering. There are the resources that we are going to be using. There is your module site. Here are your assessments. Can you see them here on the left side? Here's your study guide, your tutorial letters. And as I said, if they disappear from this side, look under this space and they will definitely be there. In the center of your module site, there are lessons. Please make an effort to go and do these lessons. And now we are at the learning objectives. Maswi, you are a lifesaver. Thank you so much. Okay, so these are our objectives. So what is this module about? It's not about what you are seeing on the screen. What you see on the screen is what they show in movies and a series and television on Netflix. This is not how it works at all. The investigation of crimes or incidents is a lot more challenging. Now, you notice I'm using two terms, crimes and incidents. If you had FOR1502 with me, you will recall that we dealt with disciplinary transgressions and we dealt with criminal offenses. So when you are gathering information, you might be gathering information or doing an investigation for a crime or a criminal investigation. Or you might be doing it for a disciplinary investigation where there's been an incident at the workplace. Doesn't matter what you are doing it for. You must ask yourself, what is the goal of your investigation? What do you want to look for? What do you want to find? And your goal is now, what we usually did in the SAPs is we had, you have objectives. What is it that you want to achieve in this investigation? Now, objectives will not be the same necessarily as the because the crime type is different, the evidence available is different, the parameters are different. So you have to, at the end of the day, what the allegation is. So if the allegation is absenteeism, you have to find information, or you have to set your objectives to give you the information that will help you prove that the person was absent from work on that day or that time or that period. Similar with a crime, if the person is charged with theft, which is the unlawful and intentional taking of the property of another person without the intention of giving it back. Those are the elements that you have to prove before the person can be arrested and ultimately convicted. So if you are a corporate or private investigator, you'll be given a mandate. And the mandate will usually spell out what it is that you are supposed to do. Now, corporate and forensic investigators and private investigators are a bit more fortunate than SAPs because they have a little bit more freedom in terms of their maneuverability. But this does not mean that you can do anything outside the law. Everything you do, every little step you take has to be both legal and ethical. Otherwise, you will burn your fingers when you present your evidence in a tribunal. If you have built a reputation that you cut corners or that you are known to tell a white lie or embellish the truth, nobody will touch you. You have to develop a sound reputation of somebody who is ethical and who does things legally and by the book. So where do you begin? When you get your mandate, when you get a case docket, I'm assuming that the majority of you are going to go into either corporate or forensic investigation, which is usually outside the police. Where do you begin? You begin by the origin of the complaint, which is usually the complainant or the victim. So after you've received your mandate or the letter of engagement, you will begin at the beginning, the complainant. It's vital that you first talk to the people who are mentioned in the mandate or the letter of engagement. I'm saying talk to them. I'm not saying rush in, take statements, accuse. We talk to people first and we gather information about what is going on. So if you are not comfortable to talk to people, you will not be a very effective investigator. I just want to see, it looks like somebody wants to come in. Okay. It's odd. I've made it open, so everybody should be able to attend without knocking on the door. Okay, so a vital skill is you have to be able to talk to people. What's important is you build rapport before you can report on anything. So when you talk to people, witness, victim, suspect, it doesn't matter who they are. It's so important that you treat each one with respect. Being respectful, professional, and polite are key skills to being effective when you work with people. People respond in general very well to somebody who is polite and respectful, even if the person might eventually accuse them of doing something illegal or against a disciplinary policy guideline. So that's very important, to be respectful. So when you sit down with your witness, introduce yourself fully. Briefly explain to them why you need to talk to them. Do not jump into the interview immediately. Ask about their interests, talk about the weather, talk about an event that was in the media recently. This just sets a relaxed atmosphere. Most of us have had a first-time date experience, and you are so nervous and you don't know what to talk about. That first 5 minutes where you starting to break the ice and sussing out the person, that's horrible. So it's so important that you know that, you know what, this person is nervous. You must set the tone. You must set the relaxed atmosphere. So chat with the person, put them at ease. And only once you can see visually that the person is more relaxed, their hands will usually slightly loosen, the posture will be a little bit more relaxed, then you proceed. It's important in this context that you face the person. We've just come out of COVID, but COVID is still a reality now. So respect that social distance. Make eye contact with the person if it is culturally respectful to do that. Use the person's name if it is appropriate. Ask the person, especially if it's a younger person towards an older person, or a male to a female, or a person, if you're speaking to a person with like a title or something like an MD or a CEO, ask the person, tell the person, my name is Bernadine Benson. Please, you feel free to call me Bernadine. What would you prefer I call you? And then they have the openness to say, you know what, call me Melody, or call me Dr. Maluleke, or call me Mr. Thomas. And then you use that name throughout. Respect the person's personal space. Some people have more personal space than others. Don't sit in their face. Remember, social distancing, but also the personal space of the person. And then mirror the person's body language. Engage with the person. Nod your head. Make sure that the person knows that you are physically and mentally in the room with them, and make sure that they know that you are listening to what they are saying. Effective interviewing is possibly one of the most important skills that an investigator must develop. The ability to get information from people without torturing them or bribing them or through other illegal means is a very specialized skill. It means that you have to be able to communicate effectively. If your evidence is obtained unlawfully, you will not be able to use it at any tribunal. The importance of lawful evidence in our social justice system is has such gravitas. It's so vital and is given such a place of eminence that it is written up in Section 35 of our Constitution. So it's constitutionally protected. Now, at this stage, you might be wondering, okay, but what is investigative interviewing? We've just talked about talking and communicating and listening. Well, investigative interviewing is the umbrella concept for two very distinct processes. The first one is an interview where you gather information from the person. And you can obtain information from anyone involved in the incident or who has knowledge about the crime. The victim, the witness, the suspect. These interviews are usually very structured because it goes, planning and structuring goes before you actually start first talking to the person. Once you realize in an interviewing process that the person you are talking to might be involved in some or another form, then you end the interview. You don't just say, okay, no, it's done now, I must go. No, you pause, you wind down, and you tell the person, thank you for their time. You've got sufficient information now. You just need to go and double check a couple of things. You will get back to them with a follow-up interview if that is all right with them. Always respectfully and always gracefully and professionally. Interrogations can be very adversarial. You want that person to confess or to admit to some part of the crime, or you want the person to explain to you, but why they're not the suspect or why they're not the criminal. You give them an opportunity to prove their innocence. But you will only interrogate somebody if you are convinced they are a perpetrator or a suspect in some or other way. It's also a very highly structured process. So wherever you start in your information gathering process, after you've communicated, after you've had a discussion with a person, you always start with an interview. You never ever rush in to an interrogation. Even the most experienced detectives will tell you that. As a forensic or corporate investigator, you may never even get to take part in an interrogation because primarily this is done by law enforcement. It's interesting, but an ex-colleague of mine who's a private investigator, he has his own company, tells me that since he left the police, he's never had to do an interrogation. He just does very structured interviews, and then he writes a research report. He never accuses the person of lying or being involved. He obtains evidence, and then this goes into the report, and whatever the company does is up to the company. He also tells me that people don't easily confess, like in the movies. People don't confess like that. This usually only happens once law enforcement gets involved. Remember that the person that you are talking to may refuse to talk to you, and that's their right, both when you are interviewing or interrogating. There is actually a decided case where a security guard was being interviewed by a corporate detective, and he refused to answer the question. He refused to talk, and in terms of the disciplinary policy of that company, he did not actually have the right to refuse to talk, and he eventually resigned because of the situation he was in, and because he was caught out in his lie. When you are interrogating somebody or preparing to interrogate them, you must realize that they do have a right in terms of a law enforcement space to not talk to you. These rights are the right to remain silent. They have the right to remain silent and to be informed of the consequences of not remaining silent. So before you start talking to this person, you warn them, you tell them, you know what, you have certain rights. You have the right to not talk to me. You have the right to, if you do talk to me, I'm going to write down anything you say, and we might use it later against you as evidence. You have the right not to be forced to make any confession or admission, and anything you say will be used as evidence. And you have the right to choose and be represented by an attorney. So those are the rights. Now, it's important that you read them the rights before you talk to them. And when I say you talk to them, I mean you talk to them. You don't shout at them. You don't swear at them. You don't ridicule them. We don't do this. We treat people, whether they are suspects or victims or witnesses, with respect, because they are human beings at the end of the day. How you treat people says more about you than it says about the person that you are talking to. So read them the rights. If they do end up saying anything, they have been warned of their right to remain silent. But this right doesn't say that you have to stop talking. You may still talk to them. You may still make statements. You may still ask questions. Sometimes they slip up and they say things, and it's to your benefit. But you will have to read the situation. And please, please, please do not tomorrow get involved in an interrogation. It's a specialized field. If this is something that you want to do, get specialized training to do it, because one does not learn the skill out of a book. You learn it by walking the road. So let's look at the structure of either an interview or an interrogation. As I said previously, they are very rigidly structured processes. Why this is so? I hear there's somebody knocking at the door. Let me just open the door. Why these processes are so structured is because there are so many steps and so many things that could go wrong. Firstly, the success or failure of what you are going to do depends a large amount on your preparation, what you do before the time. Location, location, location. You've heard that, especially in the real estate business. Where you conduct your interview or interrogation is of vital importance. Must be a quiet place. There shouldn't be disturbances. If you're interviewing a witness, there are both advantages and disadvantages to interview this person in their own space, for example, at their home or their office, versus interviewing them at your office. Interrogations must be done at an official location, like a police station, never in an isolated area. Always, always, always record what you are doing and what is going on. Never, ever do either of these alone. The same colleague of mine shared a story with me that he was tasked by a person to conduct a private investigation because he was accused of sexual harassment. What happened? This person is a police official. Another police official put in a fraudulent insurance claim, and no, sorry, he isn't a police official. He's an investigator for an insurance company. So he got this case to investigate because there were red flags, and he started doing the investigation. And then he met the client or the complainant or the claimant, and from the time she got into the car with him, he could feel something is not right, and she took him on a wild goose chase, and he eventually dropped her off at her office again. And the next thing, there were policemen at his door, and she had accused him of sexual harassment or making sexual advances to him. Fortunately, when this lady got into his car, he started recording. Now, participant monitoring or participant recording is permitted in some of the provinces. Just make sure what you may and may not do. This recording saved his butt because he was able to prove that nothing untoward happened. The allegation she made was totally, totally false. So always, preferably never do something like this alone. Always have somebody with you. Be well prepared. Know what it is you want to ask and have a plan. How do we get good at things? We practice. So practice with a colleague. This helps you to get comfortable with the flow. How do you verbalize the questions? You know what it is that you need to know in terms of the mandate you've been given and the evidence that's available. So you need to fill in the gaps. You've set your hypotheses. You have a certain speculation about what it is that you need and where you can get it. Then you focus on those things because that is the evidence you need to be able to prove your case either beyond reasonable doubt or on a preponderance of probabilities. Follow the process sequentially. Don't skip ahead. Especially in this field, there are no shortcuts, absolutely no shortcuts. If you are interviewing a victim and realize, oops, this person may be involved, rather end the interview in a friendly manner and reschedule. This is going to then give you time to follow up on whatever it is you picked up in the interview and to go and double check facts. Remember, this person has already told you A, B, and C. Now you can go double check the truthfulness of A, B, and C so that when you come back and you need to go over into an interrogation, you already know a lot more than this person thinks you know. In this process, note-taking is incredibly important, as well as a step of establishing rapport. Whether you interview or whether you interrogate, you always establish rapport. Communication is one of the most underrated and important activities that you will have to do. To interact with people, you have to communicate effectively. It's usually a one-on-one situation, face-to-face. Sometimes it's two or more people. And you have to create that reality of, you know what, it's you and I. I want to say it again. You must be able to communicate comfortably with people if you want to be effective at interviewing. And you must be an effective listener as well. So often people talk, but they don't listen. Listen to what people say. how do they say it? What words do they use? What don't they say? So in other words, what aren't they saying? And this is often as important as what they say. Listen for gaps in the story or in their version. The message is vital. Unfortunately, in our society today, we tend to be influenced by the one doing the communicating instead of listening to what is being communicated. And that we need to get rid of. That type of prejudice we have to get rid of. How do we communicate? How do we develop a sound basis for communication? And when we're there, how does this path develop? We always start with cliched conversation. You remember I said, talk about the weather, ask about the person's interests, and then identify the baseline behavior. So in other words, when you do this, you are going to see, okay, when this person, we're talking about the weather, so the person is not feeling threatened or anything, we're establishing rapport, we're setting the boundaries. I can see, okay, so this is this person's normal behavior. Then we move on to the next step. You don't go from cliched conversation to ideas and judgment. From cliched conversation, you go to reports and facts. Only once you have a solid foundation do you go to the next step. Here you start communicating about the facts of the incident. Tell me what happened. We will get to the 9 steps of interviewing just now. Who was in the office when you got there? What did you see? What did you hear? What did the person look like? What did you smell? That's sometimes a very underrated sense, is our sense of smell. I can, for example, smell when some of my colleagues have been in the office because I know which perfumes they wear. Then I know this person has been in the office. Once you have done all the sharing of the facts and the reporting, then you go over to the next phase. This is where the person starts sharing ideas with you and they make little judgments or give an opinion. You never express an opinion. But if the person says, yeah, no, I think it's Mary that stole the computer, ask, why do you think? Why do you think it was Mary? Ask, do you think that this fraud was a once-off? Have there been similar incidents? Have you experienced similar incidents? The 4th step is a dangerous step because sometimes the victim or the witness or even the suspect will go over to this step and yeah, they will start crying or they'll get angry or they'll lash out and start swearing. Don't get drawn in there. If the person starts crying and gets hysterical, be empathetic. Take a moment. Would you like some water? Can I give you a tissue? Look at the person's body language. Remember, we looked at the baseline behavior, what is normal, and now we look at the body language. What is going on here? You never cry with a person. You never laugh with a person. You never swear with a person. You be professional, you be objective, but you still maintain that contact with a person. You reflect a professional face and you look at the person in the face, you nod your head, you understand, you listening. That doesn't mean you agreeing. When you nod your head, it doesn't mean you agree. I hear you. Yes, I hear you. The last step is one you never go to. You never go into the personal or the intimate space. This is where people burn their fingers. This is where they start developing feelings for the person, and sometimes it ends up in a relationship and total conflict of interest. You are biased like you can't believe. Stay away from that. What are the communication barriers? Well, we discussed 2 of them specifically. We discussed defensive listening and we discussed the external barriers. How many of you know when you are angry with someone that you automatically go over onto defensive listening? We're all guilty of this. When we get defensive, we feel that the person is guilty. I know you did that. I know you lied to me. You did go out with that girl last night. I've made up my mind. You're guilty. I'm impatient. I'm not going to listen to the information you give me. So you know what? That is defensive listening. I go in with an agenda. I've made up my mind. You're guilty. I've made up my mind. Shame. You're the poor victim. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you might be the the actual mastermind behind the whole crime. You don't make eye contact with the person. So sometimes this happens because we didn't even attempt to establish rapport. And these are things that happen, and we must be aware of our own blind spots. We dealt with blind spots, I think, in module FOR1502. If you have a blind spot, you are more than often not aware of it. When people tell you, Jessie, do you know you tend to exaggerate? No, man, I don't exaggerate. The next person comes to you and tells you, hey, Bernadine, you told me last time that there were 10 people. Now you're telling me there were 20 people. You know, do you always exaggerate? And when you start hearing the same thing happening, catch a wake up. This might be something that you are doing. As an investigator, you have to be so aware of your own skills, your deficiencies, and you have to work on your deficiencies. If you're very brave, you can actually ask a colleague to help you. And if they pick up something that is a barrier or might be seen as negative, for example, if you walk into the room, you tend to only greet the woman. Ask the person to tell you, hey, Bernadine, you only greet the woman, you don't greet the men, so that you can become aware of your deficiencies and work on them. Then there are external barriers as well. Now, external barriers are like when your interview is not done in private, there are too many people. If there's a male interviewing a female or vice versa, that's a no-no. Phones ringing, or there's documentation lying around, there's stuff on the walls. It's not an environment conducive to an effective communication. And these are barriers that prevent proper communication. Okay, so there they are. There are your barriers, distractions. Okay, and there they are. So we have to first seek to understand before we seek to be understood. So our primary purpose when we interview is to ask questions and then listen. Ask and then listen. Ask and then listen. And when there's silence, don't feel forced to say something. Many people are afraid of silence. Don't be afraid of silence. Sometimes the person is formulating what it is they want to say. Sometimes that person wants to say something, but is scared, and now they wait for you to say something. I cannot give what I don't have. So if I don't have all the information, I cannot write an effective report. The key here is seek to understand before you seek to be understood. So seek first to understand what the person is telling you, not to just hear or listen, but to understand what it is and the implication of what they are telling you. Vital to be non-judgmental. An empathetic listener is usually a person with very high emotional intelligence. They can really tune in to what people are saying. Have you ever wondered why children don't talk to their parents about drugs or sex or things